Well, hello everyone. So it's Lieutenant Max Archer and Philip Arroyo here, and I appreciate everybody tuning in for another training moment. This time we're going to be doing the APW, the Air Pressurized Water Extinguisher here, and LT Archer is going to deploy it, and we hope that you get good use out of this video here.
All right, so one of the least utilized tools that we have available in our apparatus is the 2.5 gallon water pressurized air pressurized water extinguisher. We have it on ladder 22, both of the grass rigs, engine 11. I believe one of the apparatuses, station 3, has it on it. It has 2.5 gallons of water, which can be used to knock down some small fires. Can also be used to keep a fire in check. One of the tactical advantages of it is that it's light, it's portable, we can take it where it needs to go. So when we respond to a bells and smells call, fire alarm, smell of smoke, extinguished fire, we should be bringing the water extinguisher and probably a dry chemical extinguisher to control any sort of fire that we might find that we're in investigation. So a lot of guys like to grab the irons, like to grab a pipe pole, like to grab a flashlight, the tick, grab all those things, but somebody should grab the extinguishers just in case we find something that's on fire or that's smoldering. We don't have to go all the way back to the apparatus to stretch the red line or to stretch an attack line. We have something that we can use to keep that fire in check until we can put a complete knockdown on it. So the water extinguisher, 2.5 gallons. You'll identify the water extinguisher because it's in a chrome cylinder. Our dry chemical extinguishers, our CO2 extinguishers, and our Metal X extinguishers are all in red or yellow containers. The water extinguisher is in a silver silver cylinder. So it has its own hose and nozzle assembly, very similar to what you would find on the Pro Pack, a smoothbore nozzle. If we needed to change the pattern of this nozzle, we could put our thumb over the end to create a modified power cone or even a full fog type water application. It doesn't just have to be a straight stream that we apply the water in. That can help with steam conversion, with starting to displace some of the oxygen in that room with steam to help affect a knockdown. Our extinguishers will have a pin in them, and as we learned during the academy, our deployment method is going to follow the acronym PASS: pull, aim, squeeze, and sweep. PASS. So first thing we're going to do when we're ready to deploy our water extinguishers is we're going to pull the pin. The pin just keeps it from accidentally discharging. Doesn't charge up the cylinder or anything like that, because as we'll learn, this cylinder is charged with air pressure that we apply to it when we put the unit back in service. Next step is going to be to squeeze our handle. Squeezing our handle is going to discharge our extinguishing agent, in this case water, from our nozzle. We're going to aim. We're going to aim at the base of the fire in order to affect the most amount of knockdown we can. Then we're going to squeeze our handle to discharge our extinguishing agent and sweep back and forth to completely cover our burning material. So this 2.5 gallon extinguisher may not seem like a lot of water, but when we get steam conversion and when we use the reach of this fire stream, we're able to knock down a pretty good amount of water, or a pretty good amount of fire. By way of comparison, we're going to go ahead and deploy it now.
We have measured this out, and we think that we're going to reach about what this device calls for, which is about 40 to 50 feet in reach. So comparing it to the side of this building and this vehicle here, we'll call that about close to 30 feet. So going just beyond that, we feel would be 40 feet. So, and if he holds it down, completely down for the entire time, then it should fully empty in about 50 to 55 seconds, give or take. We'll find that out here shortly.
Ready?
Let's do it.
So you'll notice with the application of this stream, it's very much affected by the wind. We have a wind at our back, so it's affecting the quality of our stream. It causes it to break over a little bit sooner, but we got pretty good reach with this stream. If we had a fire inside in a small bedroom, if we had fire in a trash can, if we had fire in some sort of storage unit, we could use this extinguisher to reach it from a distance while we wait for an attack line to be deployed. If it's a smoldering fire, extinguished fire, something like that, we might choose to change the quality of our stream by putting our thumb over it to get more steam conversion, to convert some of our water into smaller droplets. But in either case, we got a pretty good amount of water that's coming out of here. Again, just 2.5 gallons, but when it's discharged under pressure, we can see where the fire stream is affected.
We're about 50 seconds there, so pretty close to what it's called for.
So it might be the case that we don't fully use this extinguisher. We may only use part of it in order to extinguish the fire or to cool, hot machinery or something like that. If that's the case, we don't need to fully expel the extinguisher to get rid of the air pressure. We can turn it upside down and discharge it, and it's going to release that pressure so that we're able to recharge the cylinder. There's still a little bit of water that's in here, but we don't have to spend the whole time discharging the water in order to get it ready to be refilled.
When you go to remove the valve assembly, which we'll discuss here in a little bit, this should only be hand tight, either to loosen, hand tight loosening and hand tight tightening it up. And what I mean to say is, if there's still pressure stored in there, it's going to be pretty difficult, and you're going to want to take some channel locks or something to it. And that's when you'll know that you still have some built-in pressure in there. Invert it like LT Archer mentioned, and you'll get that pressure out, and you'll soon be able to open it hand only.
So we're going to go over the process for refilling the water extinguisher. So first thing we want to do is, when we pull our pin, try to hang on to the pin. It doesn't affect whether the extinguisher works or doesn't work, but after we're done refilling it, if we can put that pin back in, it can prevent the extinguisher from accidentally being discharged. When we're doing apparatus inspections or when that thing's rattling around in a compartment going down the road, it's very possible without the pin it could accidentally discharge, rendering that equipment useless. So try to hang on to the pin after you use it. When you are done, we're going to unscrew the top valve and hose assembly. Sometimes it's a little bit tight, so you can turn the whole thing, but basically this little collar right here is just threaded. We're just going to go ahead and unthread it to remove our cylinder and valve assembly. Now, we talked about before how it can be tight to take off if it's still under pressure. It's still possible, even though we've discharged most of the pressure, there could be a little pressure behind this. So be careful when you take this off. You don't want it to fly off and hit you with whatever pressure is still left in the cylinder. Again, if you find that the cylinder is still difficult to turn that valve, then we can invert it some more and make sure we get all the pressure off of it. And one way to know if that's the case, look at your gauge. When it's properly pressurized, it's going to be in the green, but you can see that yellow arrow should start moving in the down direction. If you're still closer to the green, then you probably still got some pressure. You need to release some of that pressure. So we've released this threaded collar. We can go ahead and take out the hose and valve assembly. So inside the water can is actually going to be a little fill tube. It's kind of hard to take out because it's a little bit tight in there. That functions as a gasket to keep that pressure from being released. But it's also going to help us. Tell just by sight when the cylinder is full. Struggling a little bit coming out. So there we go. Sometimes use your assembly. So whenever we fill it by sight using this fill tube, if you'll imagine it's inside the extinguisher itself, and that water gets to the bottom of this fill tube, and you'll be able to tell by looking at it while you're filling it. We'll know that we got 2.5 gallons of extinguishing agent. This last 3 or 4 inches, that's where you put the air pressure to pressurize your water extinguisher. So we want to make sure we don't get water in that tube, otherwise we don't have the right water and air mixture to be able to discharge this appropriately. We've got to have 100 psi to be able to fit in this cylinder here, and if we fill this water up, we may not get 100 psi out of it, which will affect our stream reach or even our pattern. So one thing that some guys like to do is they like to make this a enhanced stream extinguisher. Which means adding a surfactant to the water mixture to help increase the ability for the water to penetrate whatever burning material it is. It reduces the surface tension. So that enhanced stream can be made up of Class A foam. It can be made up of just simple dish soap, something that helps the water sink into the burning material a little bit more, as opposed to beating up and running off. If that's the case, you'll be able to tell by looking at your hose and nozzle assembly. On this tube, you'll see there's some little bubbles within this tube. If it's filled with foam or soap, you're going to see a lot more bubbles. And so one thing that you can do to help from clogging up this assembly is turn the cylinder on its side, get a garden hose and stick it in here and fill it up until the water starts running out clean. If you still got bubbles coming out, it's going to affect your ability to get a full extinguisher. So, you know, a couple minutes with the garden hose running in there will get that water start coming out clean. You'll get a true fill on it. And then you can also take this assembly and run water through it to help clean this out. That way it doesn't get clogged. Just like our foam system on our pumpers, we want to make sure and flush this so that all the surfactant that's in it doesn't get clogged within this tube, doesn't get clogged within this hose, making our extinguisher less effective. So at this point, we can either use our fill tube to fill our extinguisher, or one thing I like to do is use a container that's 2.5 gallons. So in this case, I have an old DEF container that happens to be 2.5 gallons. So if I wanted to fill this extinguisher, I could fill up this DEF container with water, you know, using either a garden hose or using the utility sink. Just go ahead and start filling it up with, you know, any water that you have available to it. I've even written on the top of this DEF container, 2.5 gallons used to fill a water extinguisher. And the advantage that you have is this little fill tube right here has a little spigot on the end that you can go ahead and easily fill up your extinguisher up to precisely 2.5 gallons by using an old DEF container.
So that is one method that he's doing now, which is utilizing that DF bucket there. The second method, dropping this back into place and using your eye, using your best judgment to fill this up. Again, 2.5 gallons should be to the bottom of this fill tube here. So that's your second method. Your third method is just based on mathematical principle. We know that this cylinder alone weighs 7.6 pounds by itself, empty, with the assembly on. We know that water weighs about 8 pounds per gallon. So if we have 2.5 gallons in here, we're looking at least 16 pounds just on 2 gallons alone that this is going to add to the weight. So we can always get a scale. We can always get a scale together. We can always put that on there and see what the difference is and fill until we get to approximately 26 pounds or so. This should weigh in the end 26 pounds with it full of product. So 3 methods that we can use to refill this APW.
So once you got your full DEF container, go ahead and start pouring the water in.
So as he's filling 2.5 gallons into here, he mentioned we can use some type of either Dawn dish soap or Class A foam to use as a surfactant. We want to add that at the end. It's pretty obvious that if we add it at the beginning, then we're going to get a lot of aeration in there, a lot of suds, bubbles that will come pouring out. So fill it up 2.5 gallons, use one of the 3 methods that we discussed, and then we will move on to attaching the assembly and shutting the valve on it.
All right, so we've refilled our water extinguisher, the cylinder, using either our DEF container, the fill tube, or weight as the basis for comparison. Wouldn't be able to see it right now, but looking inside the cylinder at the fill tube, the water level is right at the bottom of that cylinder. So I got the perfect amount of water so that I have enough room inside the cylinder to pressurize it to get the maximum effectiveness of this extinguisher. So after that's done, I'm just going to go ahead and slide my valve and hose assembly back onto the extinguisher. Just like we learned before, this is just a threaded collar that I screwed back into place. Now, we're just going to go hand tight on this. This doesn't require, channel locks or a special wrench or anything like that, because once we pressurize it, the gasket that's inside this assembly is going to keep water and air from escaping it. So we're just going to go hand tight on it. So after that's done, I can go ahead, put my pin back into place just so I don't forget to do it at the end. And once I start charging my extinguisher, that'll also prevent me from accidentally discharging it and having to start the process over again. So now we got the water in there, but the key part of the extinguisher is the air pressure that's in it. If we don't pressurize it, it's just going to come out of the trickle. So in order to maximize the reach and penetration of this fire stream, we need to make sure that we pressurize it using our air chuck and our air hose. Once we take off this little cover, we see just the same sort of stem that you have on a tire. It's got the threaded adapter to it. It's got the little pin in the middle to help release that pressure. I can go ahead and attach my air chuck to it, hold that in place, and again, while I pressurize this, I want to make sure that I'm not standing directly over it, just in case those threads break loose or it's not secured properly. I don't want that thing to blow off and hit me in the face or to injure me. So I can go ahead and start filling it. And while I'm filling it, I can hear the water making bubbles inside because I'm introducing introducing air pressure into my water assembly.
These APWs can utilize nitrogen as your air source or standard compressed air. Whichever you decide to use, 100 psi is what we want to aim for, either using the gauge on your air supply or utilizing the gauge that's built into your APW and going until we get to the green section on it.
Sometimes these gauges on the extinguisher have a tendency to get old, to be less reliable. So you can see on my air chuck, it gives me a pressure gauge. If your air chuck doesn't have a pressure gauge, you can always just use a tire air pressure indicator and just put it on the end, just like you would if you're checking the air pressure inside your tires on your vehicle.
What you'll notice that LT's doing here is he's not going on and off here. If we don't apply a constant stream of air here, then what that's going to create is a lot of bubbles, a lot of soap. It could start having some of that foam that we put in there come out of the orifices here. So keeping a constant stream on there will prevent that from occurring. A couple other things while he's filling this. We don't want to introduce any type of antifreeze or anything like that for the winter time in this, because that could destroy, it could deteriorate the inside of this APW for us. So at the same time, just like any other extinguisher, we should be looking at this, evaluating it, checking for any type of damage, at least monthly, just like any other extinguisher. Now, if we can get our eyes on this twice a month, we stand at a better chance of the handle not having been accidentally discharged or the pressure been bled off due to temperature conditions, whatever it may be. But keeping at least a 1 month interval inspection on this, if not 2, will be very beneficial and extend the life of this. And when we go to use it, we can depend on it.
So went ahead and pressurized it on the cylinder gauge. We're right in that green section, right at 100 psi. So if we wanted to, we could go ahead and pull our pin and test it, make sure that we have effective reach, make sure we have an effective stream. But I feel pretty good about it. That's how to refill your water extinguisher.
All right, well that is the training moment for today, and we appreciate your time. This should come out to about 26.1 at least, and we're at 27.6. So again, 8 pounds per gallon, and the cylinder alone here weighs about 7.10 empty. You can do the math. It will work out. Thanks again.